And a warm welcome to Living the Dream French Riviera podcast, where we explore women's professional journeys while relocating to the south of France. I'm your host, Cecile. Today, I'm joined by Catherine, who left a career as a nurse in the UK to begin a new life in France. What began with nursing in Chamonix and the kind of side jobs many expats take on has since grown into a global communications business headquartered in Cannes. Along the way, Catherine has navigated French bureaucracy, built an international team spanning multiple continents, and championed diversity in the tech world. Her story is one of adaptability, resilience, and vision, and I can't wait for you to hear it. Catherine, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to hearing your story from relocating to France to growing your business here and running a global operation from Cannes. Let's begin by setting the scene. When did you move to the south of France? Where were you coming from and what was life at the time?
So there's quite a lot in that sentence, and I've lived a lot before I moved down to the south of France. So in 2003, I moved with my husband and my young daughter, and we moved to Chamonix in the French Alps, where we lived for 10 years. So prior to that, I was a senior nurse in the NHS in London. I'd undertaken a master's, and I was looking really for my next career move. I was looking to be a senior manager in the NHS. My daughter was 3 at the time. I was commuting in and out of London, so was my husband. There was a big toll on her. We got to the point where there was a natural break in my career. If I was to move, it would be that point. It was the right time for my daughter to move, and my husband had just changed jobs and had got the option to be able to work remotely, which was something not really heard of back in 2003. In actual fact, he commuted back and forwards to the UK and to Netherlands and to Paris, so his job was, he was peripatetic anyway. So we moved to France, and we moved to France in order for a quality of life, so the drudgery of going in and out of London, and for a quality of life for our daughter. I came to France having no expectations. I came having a year off, found it rewarding, found that the culture and the work-life balance was very acceptable and something I enjoyed. I started working as a nurse in France, which was completely contrary to my role in the UK. This was related in main with the role and responsibility of a nurse in France. In France, it's very much related to a task and that you're directed by the doctor, as opposed to in the UK, you're very much the patient's advocate. You're leading the care along with the multidisciplinary team. And that wasn't something that in the French environment was very prevalent. That being said, as a typical expat, we did lots of things. So we set up a business cleaning chalets every Saturday, doing changeovers, cleaning. I trained as a reflexologist. So I did reflexology, and then I did further training to be a sports masseuse as well. So I did sports massage in the evenings for people off the slopes. I did reflexology. I was nursing. I was changing linen and cleaning chalets on the turnarounds and during the week, managing those properties for clients as well. So we had lots of fingers in different pies in a very typical expat approach to trying to cope with living in a different country. We lived there for 10 years, and we created a business of our own, which was an IT or a communications business. And we looked at providing solutions for expats, much the same as us, coming to France, who were time poor, cash rich, wanted internet connectivity in their properties, but didn't know how to do it. So we did it for them. And off the back of that, we had large multinational companies coming to us and asking us for our help to sort out issues for them in France. And then some of those companies then became leaders into other countries, and we followed them. So we started doing work in Russia, in Hong Kong, in Australia, and in Canada as a result of some of these core clients. The challenge we found working in Chamonix, although it was beautiful, was the fact that it wasn't the ideal place for human resources. It's fine if you run a hotel, fine if you're in a chalet company, but if you need somebody to actually help physically, And in the domain we were in, it wasn't the best place. So we chose to move down to the south of France, which is when we moved down to Cannes. And that was in 2013. So we spent 10 years in Haute-Savoie, and then we moved down to Cannes. So I was about 41 at the time, by which point I had 3 children. My French had improved greatly, having had to argue with France Télécom engineers for the last couple of years, having worked in a retirement home as a nurse for a couple of years. So we moved to the south of France and found that the breadth of human resources that was here was a huge benefit. We need people who are multilingual, who could liaise with our clients and our suppliers in more than just English. So we brought that into what we did, and so we started to build the company. When we started in the south of France, there were only 2 of us. We had a very small office. It was about 13 square metres, and we did everything. So we were on the telephone, 3 telephones at one point, if we were trying to coordinate a technician with a carrier, with our client. It was quite possible we'd have 3 calls simultaneously going on. But from my background and from my business partner's background, who happens to be my husband, we were very much solutions orientated. We were very much about making sure that our client was at the centre of everything we do. So if you look back at my history of being a nurse, that's exactly what I was focused on. It was focused on that individual and making sure that all the requisite parts were in place in order to make sure that that patient got the right care. That's very much the ethos that we have at the moment, is our client is that centre pin. And our job is to make the delivery of whatever solution they come to us for delivered in the way that they want it, or they make them look good in front of their end client, which is more the case. It's all about reputation. It's about making sure that they feel that they're valued and that we take responsibility for what we do, which is exactly what you do as a nurse. So those common attributes and the ability to communicate effectively with somebody, to appreciate their culture, to appreciate their language, are absolutely requisite parts. So that's why we brought in more people with different languages. So at last take, I think we speak over 21 languages within the organisation, which means that we're not speaking slowly and loudly to somebody in English, which is often the case, but we are cognizant of someone's cultural background and ensuring that when we communicate with them, we communicate to them in their own language. And it's our job and our responsibility to communicate that and translate that to our customers and make sure that we are communicating our customers' requirements into the reality. So that's where we grew up, if you like, and how we ended up in Cannes. And we've had 3 different office moves, and we're in a great building now, and there's more to come after that.
Let's go back to the beginning of this business. You tried different things until obviously this one was the right one and the one that would help you grow. I suppose you had initial cultural shock when you arrived in France, especially in the professional world, and you brought to your clients something that you hadn't found yourself, and they did find, would you say?
Our clients are mainly Anglophone clients, so their anticipation and their belief in what can be delivered initially in France was not necessarily the reality. So having experienced the way in which the French work, having everything in triplicate, making sure you have everything documented before we even go through the front door was really important. So when we started at the beginning and we were looking at expats wanting to set up telephone lines and internet connections, it was actually having been exposed to that ourselves within the country to understand the complexity that was required in order to get something done which was perceived as relatively simple. But businesses fell over because they didn't understand that. They weren't able to understand the complexity of it. So we were able to translate that. And that's, as you said, it's about understanding that and having gone through that ourselves, just in administration of opening a bank account, getting your insurance, sorting out social security, and opening up internet lines and telephone lines. So we were able to pull that together. So that helped hugely.
I'm interested in the growth. You said you started with expats. How did they hear about you? Was it like word of mouth and friends of friends of friends? How did you grow your business?
2003, internet was becoming more prolific. People needed it for their business, and we set up a website. And we set up a website called Broadband in France, and it was incredibly well indexed. So we got a lot of the referrals directly through the website. We did some additional marketing, such as we put little banners on backs of seats in EasyJet flights back in the day. A lot of word of mouth, so we started working with travel companies as well who had lots of chalets, and so they wanted to make sure that their chalets were connected all the time. And if there was an issue, they had problems getting that resolved, and it was really important for their clients that they were connected all the time, high-end chalet companies. So a bit of word of mouth, but a lot of on-internet advertising and providing a service that we felt met those needs. And that's where we got our business customers from, because they started searching for broadband in France. I have a problem with my broadband in France, and we were very, very well indexed. And we popped up time and time again. It's
quite impressive to go from an expat service to something global and having multinationals.
Absolutely.
Would you describe how it happened and how you felt about it? Because were you prepared to respond to these?
Absolutely not. I mean, the first time I got an email, somebody asking for a service in Châlons-en-Champagne, and he signed his name and signed it bt.com on his email, and I thought, well, it's obviously a short and truncated version of btinternet.com. And then when he replied and found out that he was the director of a group within BT, I realised that actually this wasn't an individual or particular, it was the business that were looking for help. And so it was quite a shock. My business partner had background in working with HSBC, or as they were before then, the Midland Bank. He'd worked in marketing, sponsorship, he'd worked with big brands. So his way of communicating with those brands was great. So he was able to inform me about how best to communicate. So it was a very symbiotic relationship, really, in order to make sure that we were replying to them in the right manner. And it was a great learning experience. And to this day, I think we're still amazed of the client list that we have, given the size of company that we are. But that's because of the value add and the responsibility that we give to, we take in order to deliver for those customers. And everybody wants a good service and have somebody take responsibility for it, whether it happens correctly or not.
Neither of you have a background in tech?
Well, Toby started off building websites, and he built computers and is very IT literate. So he's self-taught. So he will configure routers, he'll go on to command lines, he's very technical, but that's self-taught.
Would you say you started at the right time when it was still okay to make mistakes and you learned along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I learnt every single stage of the way, and that's part and parcel of what I've done as I've grown in my professional career. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a marine biologist to start with. I didn't do very well in my A-levels. I went into nursing. I realised I really enjoyed nursing. I excelled at it. I went into renal nursing, so I learned about transplantation. I learned about dialysis. That's all plumbing, and effectively it's the same in IT networks. It's all about what you connect to what. So it's just really very much a case of ensuring that you've done that.
What were the challenges in setting up a company in France?
Well, we had a good accountant that was recommended to us. And I think the overarching thing is you don't know what you don't know. And our assumptions about what we needed to do with regards to setting up a company were wildly wrong. And I think we were very fortunate to have good advice at the time. Good advice to set the company up. Maybe we were a little bit naive. Well, not a little bit, we were naive to think about how we could structure the business, and we made mistakes. I think everybody makes mistakes as you go on, and you can't be an entrepreneur without making mistakes. But it is very difficult, and although you say the entrepreneurial ship isn't maybe reflected in the structure in France, I think certainly the French are very entrepreneurial. It's just that the system doesn't allow that to happen, and it's a bit of a shame in respect to the support that's in place for an entrepreneur and the security that's lacking for an entrepreneur. So if you're the gérant of a business, all the risk sits with you and none of the benefits. So you're paying out social charges, but should the business fold, you don't have very much as support in the background for you, should that happen. So I think there are some misalignments within the way in which the French state look at it. And even to this day, there will be things that happen that we're surprised about. Even having run a business since 2008, there's still things that happen. I think, really? Okay, that's overly complicated. It shouldn't happen like that, and it's detrimental to the growth of the business. But that's not something that anybody can change quickly, or probably not ever.
There were just the two of you, and when suddenly you started to grow up, you probably had to start to employ people. Can you tell us more about this?
Yeah, we started to employ people, so then we had to learn about the difference between a CDD and a CDI, everything else that came with it. So URSSAF, all the social security payments, etc. So that it was quite a challenge. We did fall foul at one point where we'd employed some people from Romania thinking they were in Europe, and they weren't, and that was before they joined Europe, and they needed a work visa, and so we were in a bit of a mess for a little while, but not because we'd done it maliciously, but because we thought we were finding the right people for the role, and we hadn't done it the right way. So going back to the point I made earlier, you don't know what you don't know. And I think that is the key, having good advisors. I think having good professional advisors and professional partners is key. So you can have an accountant that just does your books and submits, and that's all they do. What you need are advisors, and you need professional partners that will advise you and can look at things in an entrepreneurial nature and help you make those decisions. Because once you've made a decision, then for example, changing statutes from an SARL to an SAS or an SA, then takes a different step. And how do you go about that, and what do you need to record? Where do you need to record that? How the statutes change your code, your convention. What's your convention? How can you allow people to work within your code? So it's very complicated, I think, running a business in France, more so than my experience in the UK, although I never ran a business in the UK. Toby did, and his experience versus his experience in France, I mean, are poles apart, just with the level of complexity that you have to adhere to. Yeah, I think that's the challenge, really, is just making sure that you have that, but professional advisors, and making sure that you understand what's being said to you, not being afraid to say, I speak French, but I don't understand what that means. Can it be translated? Because it's so important for you to understand 100% about what you're committing to and what the responsibilities are that sit around that.
Any surprise along the way of how much of the cost of an employee?
Oh gosh, yes. As an employer, it's so frustrating that social charges and URSSAF are such a huge part of what the employer pays. I would rather pay less to the state and pay that maybe half to the state and the other half to the employee, and make sure that we can remunerate them better. Now, that being said, we've got a brilliant healthcare service. If you're made redundant, then your redundancy pay is great. So there are lots of things there from a social network point of view that that you pay for, but the on cost is almost prohibitive to allow you to grow. And the challenge I think the French state have, and they should really embrace, is making sure that what's right for a business of 10, 20 people isn't the same as looking at Peugeot or a big multinational company who employ thousands of people. The rules and regulations for that size of company shouldn't be applied to a small company. And I think that's where there is a huge opportunity. If those were to be relaxed, I think you would be able to grow those smaller businesses into medium-sized businesses a lot more, rather than effectively those small businesses not being able to grow, contract, or at worst fail because of the obligations that are there.
When you compare France to Germany, for example, in France you have small businesses and you have those giant LVMH, etc. Whereas in Germany you have lots of medium-sized businesses. Would you say this is where the problem is in France?
I think Germany has got its own problems as well, and a lot of those relate to what you can and can't do with your employee rather. If they're not any good, how you can remove them from the business, what the overall pay is for that. I don't think anybody's got it right, and I don't think any country has got it right. You have the extreme solutions in the States where you're only one paycheck away from living on the street, and then you've got the constraints that we're under in France. We have a business in Spain. What was interesting about setting up in Spain a few years ago were that the social regulations were a lot more fluid. It allowed us to employ people and to release those people if they weren't fit for the role. Whereas now it's a more socialist government, there are more restrictions put into place, and from a corporate perspective, getting money out of the country once you've set it up and once you've creating revenue there is quite difficult, and there are more tax related. So I don't think anywhere in Europe has got it right, and I think there are always pros and cons regardless of where you are, and obviously wherever you grew up you see as your utopia maybe because you know how it works, but that doesn't mean that it's right.
So you had your small business, two people, you and your partner, and then you grew, and then at some point you grew overseas or over the borders to Spain, and I believe even in the United States.
Yeah.
How did this happen, and why did you choose to grow in this area? Was it because of the business or because France wouldn't allow you to grow the way you wanted to grow?
So the area we work in is telecoms, international telecoms. In order to access a lot of those markets, you need to have an entity in a particular country. So in order for us to access the market to buy connectivity, wholesale connectivity in the US, we needed a US entity. So we set up the US entity. We set up a Spanish business for that reason, but also looking at talent and resources available. We set up a UK business prior to Brexit to ensure that we would have a mechanism to be able to invoice our customers in the UK, depending on what happened with Brexit. So that was a decision we made prior to Brexit. We have a Polish entity, and that really is an SPV, so a special purpose vehicle. So one of our clients is SpaceX, and they had a particular requirement in Poland that we were able to meet. But in order to buy electricity, in order to contract with landowners, we needed an entity in Poland. So we have a French entity, a Spanish entity, a US entity, and a UK entity and a Polish entity. For our communications business, we've subsequently opened a technology business, which is AI business. And we have a technology base in France and a technology base in Spain as well. So we're a very complicated small business. So we say we're a small business with big business requirements and big business aspirations.
How many people worldwide?
We're about 45 at the moment. We try to be as agile and as flexible as possible for the reasons that we've already talked about social charges. We have to be aware that at the end of the day, a customer will pay X for a service and we can only charge that much, and how much we buy, and the middle is how much we make. So we have to cut our cloth accordingly. We have people globally, so we have people working for us in Africa, we have people working for us in the Philippines, we have people working for us in Central and South America and in the US, in Spain and the UK. That's the breadth of everybody. So we're a very multinational company.
Would you say that having to set up a company in France, which was not your original country, helped you to set up companies afterwards?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the same for moving to another country, actually. I think once you've done it once, the fear aspect is removed, that you have more of a likelihood or a tendency to move elsewhere because you know it's feasible. That fear factor at the beginning, whether it's opening up another country, opening up another company in another country, you understand there are going to be ramifications, you understand there are going to be complications of it, but you've already done it once. So you can then look at that, pull from your experiences, rightly, good experience, bad experiences, and have a good anticipation of what to achieve. And growing a business, and as it evolves and matures, you understand much more about what your needs are going to be and what the size of company or the formula of that company needs to be in those territories.
Were you ever tempted to relocate somewhere else for the business or for your personal journey?
Yes. And when we first moved, we thought, oh, well, if it doesn't work in France, we'll move to Norway. I have no idea why we said Norway. But now we thought about relocating to the US because there's a big business opportunity there. And if you're in the US, then you're more likely to get that opportunity. But we have a constant dialogue about where we should be. The structure of the business at the moment means that we're located in France, our holding company is in France, and if we were to move the holding company, then everything around tax, sale of assets, where those assets sit, in which country they sit, would really inform us as to how we could move according to that. So probably the flexibility that we maybe thought we had is constrained by the company and where its assets sit as to where we can be in order to be able to manage the business.
Your job has evolved tremendously from being just a two-people company to now being... What's your title again?
So until recently I was Chief Impact Officer, which sounds very glamorous, but because we had two businesses essentially. We had the connectivity, the AI business. We needed people everywhere. We needed to make sure that the culture was maintained. The only reason we've got to where we've got to is because we empower people who work with us. We breed a good culture. People go the extra mile and they want to do it. And they feel that they're doing it for the good of Smart CAC. So we always say we're small but we're strong because we're many. We're not very many, but together we're many. And it was really important to us that as we grew, we maintain that culture, which is so difficult in some businesses to maintain a positive culture. So that was really my new role, was to do this and to try and ensure that our culture was all-pervading. And that meant to the point where a customer came into our business that they had the same approach, and not their same approach, but we had the right approach all the way through their time within the company, so they felt that they were being looked after by Smart CIC. And so if there was something that wasn't wrong, that was my job to pick up on and to find out what we were doing wrong in order to make sure that it didn't happen again. In the last couple of months, my role has changed yet again. We employed a managing director, and unfortunately he had some health issues, and his father had some health issues. So he's taken a sabbatical, and we're not sure when he'll be back. So I'm the interim managing director at the moment of Smart CSE Services, managing those teams in his absence. So yes, I've gone from chief bottle washer, still wash bottles, to being on our service desk, to talking to technicians, to configuring routers, to cleaning the toilets, to doing the accounts, the sales, and I always sell. I mean, it doesn't matter who I talk to, I'm always constantly selling what we do because I believe in what we do. So it's very difficult for me not to sell who we are and bring people in. But I think that's the communicator side. That's why I loved being a nurse, because I could talk to people and I'd listen. Really important. Listen to what they wanted, listen to their concerns and anxieties, take it away and come back with a solution. And that's what we do. And so even in my role at the moment, if something needs to go out, I don't know, we need to send a package out and it involves me putting a SIM card in something, packaging it up, getting in the car because we've missed DHL and driving it to the depot, then that's what we'll do because that's what we do. So, yes.
So your role has evolved.
Yeah.
You're doing it happily and naturally, but in a way it's not very far from what you've always done, taking care of everybody and making sure you
I am really the mother hen of the organisation. And if somebody, even now, if somebody faints or there's a problem, then I get called in and said, Catherine, can you sort this out? So I am very much the mother hen, and I do feel a personal responsibility to everybody that works within the organisation, rightly or wrongly.
But managing director, it's something different now. It's something you're looking forward to.
Yes, I mean it's a challenge, and it's something that I've always wanted to do. But it's a new challenge, and I like a challenge. So, but I've got a good team around me. I've got good managers delivering. I've got a good FD, fellow woman, who's got a lot of experience, and my business partner, Toby, is the CEO, so he manages the group and he manages the AI business as well, and he's done this before, so he's able to help and develop and nurture me, if you like, in order and put me in the right direction. So I think we make a good team in that respect.
When did you think of during earlier talks before we started this recording, Toby was telling me that it was very important to have 50 women present in key roles and not just... Did it come naturally, or is it something at some point you saw your business growing and at some point you say, oh, we have to be careful because we're not going in the right direction in that way, or how did it happen?
I think it was natural in the fact that we wanted to be representative. And we were fortunate when we employed people to begin with. We had a good gender divide. And as we've grown, and when we started looking for more senior roles, at that point it was a purposeful intent. So when we looked for a CTIO for a technology business, we went out with a particular remit to find a lady for that role because we wanted to make sure the representation at board level was accurate. Now, it wasn't positive discrimination, so it wasn't us saying we're going to take the only woman or whatever women there are for the role, then we will take one of those. It was positive recruitment decision to go out and look at what was available and to search out those individuals and on merit, interview the people who ticked all the boxes. Lots of research has shown that women are particularly bad at applying for jobs because they'll turn around and they'll say, well, I don't meet all the criteria. Whereas a man will come along and say, well, I'm that age and I've worked in that industry, therefore everything else I can do. I'll give it a go. And women don't do that. They want to tick everything else before applying for it. So we're very mindful of that. So the CTIO is a woman, but it was based on merit. I'm very mindful of saying that Inclusivity shouldn't just be about a gender divide, it's about everything. It's about culture, it's making sure that it's diverse, neurodiversity as well, sexual diversity. Different people with different outlooks on life bring so many different aspects to how you deliver and how you look at problems and how you work with an organisation that can only be a positive. And so we've felt that we've developed much better from having that diversity within the organisation. And certainly within the tech industry is a very big push to try and find that diversity and to see that gender divide starting to close. We're fortunate because we're a relatively small company, but when you look at the big companies such as T-Mobile, Deutsche Telekom, Orange, whoever they may be, Telefonica, and I go to lots of conferences worldwide, there is a big play there about women in tech, and they talk about having your allies in the room. But those allies are our male colleagues who are there, as Toby talked about prior to this meeting, of saying, being an advocate and saying, yes, we need people with different diversity in order to challenge all the white men sitting around a boardroom, because they've all got the same approach, they've all got the same mindset, they all think that we can do the same thing. And what we need to do is to be able to stand back and look at something and approach it in a slightly different manner, and be able to feel that we allow those people to be assertive and to be able to voice that within that environment. So I do a lot of that when we go to conferences. I participate in podcasts where we're talking about it as well. And we've done something really fantastic in Africa where we've sponsored a women's only IT residential program because of that particular requirement. And so that's a bit off subject for this, but the company said, the NGO said they didn't think it would work, and we were very demonstrative and said, no, we would like to do it. And they said, okay, we'll give it a go. It was oversubscribed 3 times. There was one woman who took 3 days to get to the location in order to undertake the course. You have to remember that these women are very bright. They want to participate, they want to develop their own skills. But if they were to say they were going into a mixed residential course, their families would say no. So being able to provide a walled garden, if you like, of just women allows the growth of these women. So what we try and do in our small company in the middle of Cannes, where we feel that we have the opportunity and we're fortunate to be able to grow the business how we want to grow it, is to be able to offer that to other areas and to try and empower them in order to grow and develop as well.
So you're offering the chance of a professional journey you had, you're offering it to these women. Yeah. That's wonderful. Yeah. Before we wrap up, I'd love to hear a bit about what life feels like here beyond the work. I don't know if you have any time to...
It's great because when I go on to calls with customers and they say, well, tell us a little bit about yourselves. And they say, well, we're this, we do that. And where are you based? Cannes. And they'll turn around and they say, you're British, why are you based in Cannes? And I'll say, excuse me. Oh, the sky is blue and the sun's shining. And it's not raining and it's not cold. So it's a great icebreaker as well when you go to conferences. People will come over and go, can I come and see you in Cannes? Like, yeah, by all means, come. It's fine. So we're very fortunate to be where we are. We've got good transport links, so we can go to Nice and we can fly wherever we need to go to. It's very multicultural, multilingual. I have 3 children, 2 still at home, just. They've grown up all being bilingual. Actually, 2 of them are trilingual. It's a great environment. We're in Europe, and it means that we can move around as much as possible. And I think that's hugely beneficial. And being able to speak another language, understand a different culture is fantastic. And the weather is not too bad either.
Is life on the Riviera really as glamorous as it seems.
Possibly if you're on the croisette all the time, but we're growing a business, and we're entrepreneurs, so we're always working. However, as a family, we took up golf a few years ago, and so we often on a Friday afternoon managed to take some time back and go and play golf. We play on a Saturday and on a Sunday with the kids as well, which is fantastic. And I think the whole ambiance leads itself to leading an outdoor life and making the most of what you have around and going for lovely walks. We've got dogs, so we're out walking the dogs in some beautiful areas as well.
What would you say is the most iconic place on the Riviera?
Well, I suppose iconic probably would be Monaco for that, but then you have Saint-Tropez and you have Cannes. I would think those were your iconic areas, depending on what floats your boat, what makes you think, if you're into geology and you go to the Gorge de Verdun, it's quite staggering.
Do you have a favourite spot or a hidden gem you'd like to share with us?
I do love the Îles de la Reine. I think those are absolutely beautiful. You can be on a ferry for 20 minutes and then feel as if you're 1,000 miles away from anywhere on the Riviera. So I think that's an absolute gem.
How do you see the region evolving for family, professionals or international newcomers?
I think in Cannes itself, where we're located, the mayor is trying to look at developing more for international business. Obviously the Riviera is known for tourism, but there's a big push now to try and look at international business. We've got Sophia Antipolis, which isn't very far away. We made a conscious decision to base our business in Cannes, not in Sophia Antipolis, primarily because although it's seen as the French Silicon Valley, if you speak to anybody internationally, they don't know of it. So if you say Cannes, they know where Cannes is. If we're looking for human resource, being in Cannes means they can come by a train, by car, by bus, by bike. You can't do that in Sophia Antipolis as well. So I think creating more of an international focus is very much what Cannes is trying to do, and bringing in more conferences from different areas such as MIPIM for the Immobilier. There's a big conference now and for data centres that happens in Cannes once a year. So I think it's starting to grow as more of an international hub. But there's a lot of work to do, otherwise people will just see it as tourism, hotels and tourisms and restaurants, which is great for the economy, but you want to build on that. Where I live, it's safe, it's great for the children, lots of outdoor activities to go on, education's very good, and I think it gives the children a very open view, not a very colloquial French view, if we were to be in the Auvergne, for example.
Catherine, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. It's been fascinating to hear how you've grown a global business while navigating life and work here in the south of France, and how much dedication and vision it has taken along the way.
Thank you very much. It's been a delight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Living the Dream French Riviera. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share, follow and like. It really helps others discover the podcast. You can find more about Catherine and other inspiring women building meaningful lives on the Riviera on our website, livingthedreampodcast.com. And if you'd like to support my work, you'll also find a link there to help me keep creating new episodes of Living the Dream. A heartfelt thank you to Claire Long, whose music adds warmth and emotion to every episode. I'm Cecile and this has been Living the Dream French Riviera podcast. À bientôt!